Doctors hate this. The three-word sleep fix boomers swear by. Struggling to fall asleep night after night? One three-word phrase, used by thousands of boomers, halts racing thoughts in seconds. No pills required. While sleep medication prescriptions have doubled in the past decade, a remarkably simple mental technique is helping people across America drift off naturally, often within minutes. Dr. Margaret Chen at the Stanford Sleep Institute calls it surprisingly effective. Yet most physicians never mention it. Why? Because it costs nothing, requires no prescription, and can be learned in under a minute. For Eleanor in Portland, this approach ended 8 years of chronic insomnia after just 1 week of practice. For Robert in Florida, it replaced the sleep medication he'd relied on for over a decade. The pharmaceutical industry makes $70 billion annually on sleep aids. Yet this three-word technique, which I'll reveal in the next few minutes, has helped thousands reclaim their natural sleep rhythms without side effects or morning grogginess. Could 3 simple words really transform your nights? Let's explore what's keeping you awake and how this unlikely solution works so powerfully. You and I both know how it feels, that particular kind of loneliness that comes with lying awake at 3 a.m. The house is quiet. Your partner may be sleeping peacefully beside you. And there you are, watching the minutes tick by, calculating how little rest you'll function on tomorrow. Perhaps your mind races with worries or replays conversations from earlier in the day. Maybe your thoughts scatter like leaves in the wind, never settling long enough for sleep to arrive. Or you might fall asleep easily, only to wake at 2 a.m., wide-eyed and restless until dawn finally breaks. You've likely tried everything: melatonin, warm milk, lavender, eliminating screens, sleeping pills that leave you groggy. The frustration builds with each passing night, and with it comes that creeping anxiety as bedtime approaches. Will tonight be another struggle? That question alone sometimes becomes enough to keep sleep at bay. First story: Eleanor's 8-year battle. Eleanor had always been a solid sleeper until menopause hit at 52. It was like someone flipped a switch, she recalls. 1 month I was sleeping normally. The next I was lucky to get 3 hours a night. Her doctor suggested hormone replacement therapy, which helped with hot flashes but did nothing for her insomnia. Next came sleeping pills, Ambien at first, then stronger prescriptions when the first stopped working. The medications helped her fall asleep, but left her feeling foggy and disconnected during the day. I wasn't living anymore, Eleanor explains. I was just existing in this half-awake, half-sedated state. My grandchildren would visit, and I couldn't fully engage with them. Something had to change. At 60, after 8 years of pharmaceutical solutions, Eleanor attended a community workshop on aging well. The sleep specialist there mentioned a simple 3-word thought exercise that participants could try instead of counting sheep. Eleanor was skeptical, but desperate. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, I think it helped a little. By the 5th night, I fell asleep within 20 minutes of going to bed, something that hadn't happened in years without medication. Within 3 weeks, Eleanor had weaned off her sleeping pills entirely, with her doctor's supervision. 1 year later, she sleeps an average of 6.5 hours nightly. Not perfect, but a transformation from where she had been. The most surprising part was how something so simple could work when everything else had failed, she says. But I guess that's the beauty of it. What Eleanor discovered was just one application of this approach. For our next story, the technique worked in an entirely different and unexpected way. Second story, Robert's midnight anxiety. Robert had served as a firefighter for 32 years. After retirement, he found himself waking almost every night around 2 a.m., heart racing, mind immediately filling with worries about his adult children, finances, and health concerns. It was like my brain had a standing appointment with every anxiety I'd ever had, Robert says. Once I woke up, that was it. I'd be up for hours going through worst-case scenarios. He tried sleeping pills, but hated how they made him feel the next day. Meditation apps helped somewhat, but required keeping his phone nearby, which sleep experts had advised against. For 3 years, broken sleep became his normal routine. At a veterans support group, another former first responder mentioned a simple mental exercise he'd learned from his therapist. 3 words that had transformed his sleep. Robert was dubious, but willing to try anything. The first few nights, I'd wake up as usual, but try the technique. Sometimes I'd fall back asleep within 30 minutes, instead of my usual 2 hours. By the second week, there were nights I slept straight through, something that hadn't happened in years. What surprised Robert most wasn't just that he slept better, but how his daytime anxiety decreased as well. It was like training my brain to handle worries differently at night somehow carried over into my waking hours too. 6 months later, Robert sleeps through the night 4 to 5 times weekly, a remarkable improvement. His blood pressure has decreased, and his doctor has been able to reduce his hypertension medication. If someone had told me 3 words could make this much difference, I'd have laughed, Robert admits. But the simplicity is what makes it possible to use when you're half asleep and struggling. Robert's experience revealed another dimension of this technique. But for our next story, the same approach worked in yet a different context. Third story, Martha's chronic pain challenge. Martha had lived with rheumatoid arthritis for over 20 years. While medication controlled much of her daytime discomfort, nighttime brought heightened awareness of every ache and pain, making sleep elusive. When you lie down and everything gets quiet, there's nothing to distract you from the pain, Martha explains. I'd focus on every throb and twinge, which made them seem worse, which made sleep impossible. Her rheumatologist had prescribed sleep medications, but Martha was concerned about adding more pharmaceuticals to her already extensive regimen. After reading about non-medical approaches to sleep, she decided to try alternative methods. After experimenting with various techniques, Martha attended a pain management workshop where the facilitator mentioned a simple 3-word phrase that had helped participants redirect their attention away from pain sensations at night. I thought it sounded too simplistic, Martha remembers, but I was desperate enough to try anything that didn't come from a pill bottle. The first week, Martha noticed only slight improvement, but as she continued practicing the technique, something unexpected happened. While the pain didn't disappear, her relationship with it began to change. I stopped fighting against the sensations so much, she explains, and somehow that mental shift created just enough space for sleep to arrive. 3 months later, Martha's quality had improved dramatically. She still had painful nights, but they no longer automatically meant sleepless ones. Her morning stiffness decreased, likely a result of more consistent sleep, which improved her daily mobility. The pain is still there, Martha acknowledges, but it's no longer the tyrant controlling my nights. What Martha discovered was yet another application of this seemingly simple approach. But for our final story, the technique revealed its most powerful dimension. Fourth story, James's post-retirement insomnia. James had enjoyed a successful career as an engineer, thriving on complex problem-solving and mental challenges. But 6 months into retirement, he found himself lying awake most nights, his mind refusing to shut down. "My brain didn't seem to get the memo that we were retired," James jokes. "It kept spinning with ideas, solutions to problems that weren't mine anymore, and endless to-do lists that didn't matter." His doctor suggested both medication and cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. James tried the latter, but found the techniques difficult to maintain consistently. The medication helped him fall asleep, but left him feeling mentally dulled during the day, the opposite of what he wanted in retirement. At a community college class on brain health, the instructor mentioned a simple 3-word mental exercise that had shown promise for people with overactive minds at bedtime. The approach sounded too elementary for James's complex thinking patterns, but he decided to give it a try. "The first time I used it, I was shocked," James recalls. "My mind had been jumping between at least 20 different thoughts, and within minutes of using this technique, everything quieted down. I fell asleep before I knew what was happening." What surprised James most was how the technique seemed to work with his natural thought patterns rather than fighting against them. Unlike meditation, which had always been difficult for his active mind, this approach actually utilized his brain's natural tendencies. "It's been a year now, and I use it almost every night," James says. "Not because I have insomnia anymore, but because it creates such a peaceful transition into sleep. I've never rested better in my life." James had discovered what may be the most universal application of this deceptively simple technique, one that works particularly well for people with active, analytical minds. These stories reveal 3 essential truths about sleep that often go unacknowledged. First, sleep is not simply a physical process, but a mental one. While we focus on mattresses, pillows, and room temperature, the mind's activity often determines whether sleep arrives or remains elusive. Second, the harder we try to force sleep, the more it evades us. The very effort to sleep creates a paradoxical alertness that prevents what we're trying to achieve. This explains why so many conventional approaches, even medically sound ones, sometimes fail to deliver lasting results. Third, and perhaps most importantly, sleep approaches that work harmoniously with our natural thought patterns tend to succeed where those that fight against our mind's tendencies often fail. This is why highly individualized methods sometimes outperform standardized protocols. But this raises a deeper question. If something so simple can be so effective, why isn't it more widely known? Why do we continue to favor complex pharmaceutical solutions over elementary mental techniques? Could our modern approach to sleep have overlooked wisdom that humans have known for centuries? Here's the insight that transformed nights for Eleanor, Robert, Martha, and James, the 3-word phrase. "Not right now," works by gently acknowledging and postponing the mind's activity rather than fighting against it. This deceptively simple phrase harnesses a profound psychological principle. Thoughts that we try to suppress tend to become more persistent, while thoughts that we acknowledge but gently defer often naturally subside. When we say to our racing thoughts, "Not right now," we're neither engaging with them nor rejecting them. We're simply rescheduling them for a more appropriate time. The power lies not in magical words, but in the fundamental shift of relationship with our own thoughts. Rather than being captive to every worry, plan, or sensation that arises, we reclaim agency over when we'll address them. What if, instead of seeing nighttime thoughts as the enemy of sleep, we recognize them as simply mistimed activities of a healthy mind-owners that can be gently rescheduled without resistance or struggle? Perhaps the real obstacle to sleep isn't our thoughts themselves, but our relationship with them. The night mind is not broken when it produces thoughts, it's simply doing what minds naturally do. Our task isn't to silence this essential part of ourselves, but to guide it with the gentle wisdom of timing. There's a quiet dignity in acknowledging that our concerns matter enough to be addressed, just not in the middle of the night. Not right now honors both the importance of our thoughts and our present need for rest. It creates a compassionate boundary around sleep rather than waging war against our own consciousness. Your mind's activity is not your enemy. It's simply the sound of your intelligence, your care for others, your engagement with life, sometimes arriving at inconvenient hours. The wisdom lies not in shutting it down, but in kindly showing it to the waiting room until morning. As you prepare for sleep tonight, remember that 3 simple words, "Not right now," can create the gentle boundary your mind needs to surrender to rest, not through force or medication, but through wise partnership with your own consciousness. You've earned these restful nights. Your mind deserves this peaceful arrangement with itself, and your days deserve the clarity and presence that only refreshing sleep can provide. May your nights become a time of genuine restoration. Your thoughts find their proper daylight hours, and your relationship with sleep transform from struggle to sanctuary. And next time, discover why the gratitude practice everyone recommends might actually be making you more anxious, and the simple timing shift that transforms it from obligation to genuine joy.